Vivriti presents the Game Changers Summit.
It is now time to welcome on stage the founder and managing director of Vivriti Capital and Vivriti Asset Management, Mr. Vineet Sukumar.
I thought I would take a couple of minutes to take you through two examples of game changers and their own unique way of thinking that have personally inspired me. This is at the Oscars prior to World War II. It's nearly 100 years back. In 1934, the Walt Disney Company had possibly a staff of 200 people and was already a very successful short feature film company for animated films. And at that time, Walt Disney took on a big bet that he would make the first long animated feature film. People thought he was crazy and completely dissuaded him. It turned the company almost bankrupt. It took him as long to make this film as it took to make Bahubali. It took nearly 5 years. It took $1.5 million at that time, princely sum of money. This film, by the end of 1938, became the highest grossing film of that year and earned $6.5 million. Can anybody see the picture and guess what that film should be? Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, that's right. An absolutely inspirational story of somebody who kind of really stuck to conviction, took huge risks, which had a massive payoff. The next picture is probably more familiar to those of us who are students of finance in the audience. In 2007, Warren Buffett entered into a bet with the entire hedge fund industry. He said that the index fund could deliver more returns than a portfolio of hedge funds over a 10-year period. And he bet $1 million against it at that bet. A hedge fund manager took up the bet. While the bet was to go from 2007 to 17, in 2015, the hedge fund manager conceded defeat. This is the picture of the returns that ensured. Warren Buffett, by investing in a Vanguard fund, clocked 85% returns in gross. None of the 5 hedge funds that were there in the portfolio could even come close. The average was 22%. This just goes to show that when you approach the problem of investing absolutely bottoms up, right? I mean, hedge funds were the fad. Even now they continue to be the fad. But Warren Buffett said that if you're a manager and you're at 0.04% of fees, which is what Vanguard was charging, versus the hedge fund industry at 2% and 20% of carry, this is what would happen. And he was proven right over a decade. I think these are just kind of great examples to show, to inspire us on and possibly guide us in our way of thinking on how we must be bold, how we must take bets, how we must stick to conviction, how we must stick, think absolutely bottoms up. I think the future is coming up very, very fast, and it will take all of what we have to weather it.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to welcome our next speaker, an innovator, academician, environment activist, and an education reformist. Meet the founder of Students' Educational and Cultural Movement in Ladakh. And ladies and gentlemen, a revolutionary who has changed the game for a community. Please put your hands together as we welcome on stage none other than Mr. Sonam Gujral.
Growing up in a place like Ladakh, you learn to make the most amidst adversities. And that's what my story is. I learned that it's a different curriculum it takes to become a problem solver. The curriculum that it takes to become a problem solver are things like curiosity. Curiosity that comes loaded with every child is the secret of learning, not the textbooks, not the teachers. So curiosity is the first pillar of problem solving, even in a harsh place like Ladakh. But curiosity alone is not enough. It can be monkey curiosity, just to entertain yourself. To become a problem solver, you need more than that, and that is empathy. That is a feeling for others' pains and problems and wanting to solve it. Now, this you don't get from schools. From school, you get how to compete and how to give problems and how to step on others and compete and cutthroat compete. That's not empathy. This I learned more from my mother than any teachers or any school, because my mother was always concerned. She was not schooled, but highly educated in my terms. Anybody who's passing by would get things to eat, drink, and so on. And that made me learn to care about others' problems. Much later, I see that that's true for businesses. Businesses that really click for generations are those that actually solve a real problem. So even in business, empathy, if it is powered by, it's a business that really is loved and lasts for generations and is playing a role in society. The third pillar is the spirit of initiative. Not just empathy alone, but initiative to go out and do it. And again, that I, of course, had no schools to learn, but I learned it more from my father than any others. He would always be going out and doing it and not just sitting hand on hand. Whether it was a broken handle on the door or an unfair system in society, he would change it. And that, I think, is what finally makes things change. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll stop here now.
I'd like to invite on stage Ms. Anita Bilani, the Independent Director of Vivriti Capital, to please come up and address the gathering. Also introduce our keynote speaker for this evening.
Our keynote speaker, Mr. K.V. Kamath, I'm sure we are all waiting for, to hear him out. If I were to think about his story, this is the biggest game changer in the financial services industry. Taking a developmental financial institution and creating one of the biggest retail banks in the country, which is ICICI Bank, but not really stopping there. Also creating very large institutions in asset management and insurance. So it's, somebody who's always looking for this opportunity. And a stalwart like this is, so inspirational. And I think, there's no stopping somebody like Mr. Kamath because he's still at it and he's still part of NAPFID. And I'm sure there are many more journeys and opportunities for him to conquer and inspire us. So, Mr. Kamath, please do come on stage and we'd love to hear from you.
When I became CEO of ICICI, the parent of the bank, I said, if we have to grow and we have to put a mainframe in the bank, we can't afford it. So my IT people said, well, then you basically can't run technology. I said, no, there are newer things happening and let's take a bet on those. So we became adept at using technology because we had no choice. And we used newer technology, took a bet on it and scored. I'm a great believer in theory of constraints. That you throw a constraint and you have to jump higher, you have no option. So we had a constraint. In the bank of 1999-2000, ICICI Bank, it may be 250 or 300 branches. I said, can we acquire? So there were a few acquisition targets, but they would give me another 250 branches, nothing more. So how do you grow? Technology. So what do? You put in ATMs, and everybody laughed at us. Because we were getting licenses for only 50 new branches in a year. And the largest bank out there had 10,000 branches. I don't have 200 years to live to become somewhere there with 10,000 branches. So you had to put out ATMs. And at a point in time when there were 50 ATMs, you said we will put 1,000 ATMs. Well, I won't go into the challenges there. But that was rolled out. In the next 8 months, we rolled them out. And then, of course, we kept growing it. What I'm saying is the ability to take calculated risks on technology was there even then. People took it in a measured way. I think it is today available in much larger footprints, as it were, and you could do it at a much faster pace, and probably at a cost cheaper than what it was then, because all costs have disrupted. I will end by, maybe a slight note of caution on one subject. I think there is always going to be a challenge between value creation and valuation. Almost every platform that I have seen, and the young people come to me, discuss, I have been impressed, enormously impressed. Platforms that I use, which all of you use probably in daily life, I'm enormously impressed. These are really innovators. These guys are disruptors, and they will mean a lot to India as we go along. Aspire for that 25 trillion economy and where you are in that economy. align your value and valuations, and I'm sure you will be unstoppable. Thank you, Vineet. Thank you, the Vivriti team. Thank all of you.
I'd now like to invite on stage Ms. Namrata Kaul, the independent chairperson of Vivriti Capital, to please come up on stage and give us the closing remarks.
Whatever we have heard today has been inspiring. And to that extent, I think the summit has been successful in achieving what it set out to do. That is to constantly challenge ourselves and to aim for more. And that is exactly what we continue to do at Vivriti today. It is our belief that the market needs not one Vivriti, but many such Vivritis, and it's for all of us to pave the path to reach that goal.
Thank you all once again very much for being a part of the first ever edition of the Game Changers Summit 2022. This is a community that is certainly going to increase the GDP of the country and going to foster one another. And we hope to see you for many more sessions and, of course, the second edition as well.
Vivriti presents the Game Changers Summit. Focus.